We are taking a virtual tour of Portugal's wine regions with Diego Ventura, who's with us tonight. Sit back and relax while discovering the best wines and districts. What a fantastic idea. Good evening to you, Diego. Thank you for being here. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm here to talk a little bit about Portuguese wines. And before I start, I will just briefly introduce myself. I am I work in wine for a long time now, and I've been doing wine education for the last 7 years, more or less, and specifically in Portuguese wines for the last four. Um, I hold a degree of master in wine tourism innovation by the universities of Bordeaux, Porto, and Rovira Virgili in Barcelona. And basically, what I do in the wine school, I coordinate the school, and I'm responsible for the WST certifications here. If you want to know more, learn more, we were the first school to be completely bilingual. So, for example, we have courses taught in English every day, and WSETs. We were the first one to have WST taught in English as well in Portugal. So, if you want to learn more about it, just let me know. Just drop me in mail or something like this. I will just share my screen to start showing you what you will know if you visit the wine school.
Fabulous.
Okay,
What
so
wonderful
basically,
credentials, Diego. Thank you for being
well,
here
thank you.
tonight. What a
No problem.
fantastic job.
Yes, not bad at all, right? Not bad at all. Okay, so you all see my presentation?
We can see that.
Yes,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
amazing.
Yeah.
So let's go. Basically, the wine school is in this marvelous 18th building, 18th century building. We used to be the craft cellar in Vila Nova de Gaia, in the historical part of the Vila Nova de Gaia, and we are part of the WOW, the World of Wine. Basically, the World of Wine is a huge venture. It has 6 museums, actually 6 activities. One traditional museum that now is with an exhibition of Salvador Dali, and now and also has, of course, the wine school. The wine school was set to be a bridge between the local community and the tourism. So basically, we work in a hybrid environment, focusing on every audience that are slightly into wine. So if you like wine, or if your companion likes wine, just come to the wine school. You will have a very good time, I'm sure. So today we're going to talk about Portuguese wine regions, but to start about talking about the regions, we're going to focus on the 5 main ones, or the 5 more knowledgeable ones, and then but before we start, we will just do a quick introduction on Portugal. Portugal has 14 wine regions. Inside of those regions, 31 denomination of origin. For those that you don't know what those terms means, denomination of origin basically allows the producers to allows the producer to protect the typicity of the region while producing wine. So, if you try a wine that has a very good typicity, you should be able to distinguish their main characteristics that are set by the regulation of the region. A little bit about Portugal as a whole. Portugal, I don't know if you know this. This is like wine 101, but grapes for the production of wine, Vitis vinifera. Normally, they are planted in between 30 and 50 degrees of latitude, both in North Hemisphere and South Hemisphere. Okay, Portugal is right in the middle. What makes it perfect to produce wine in every single part of the country. Even, for example, in the warm Algarve, in a very warm Algarve in Alentejo, to the fresh and humid Vinho Verde. Okay? You can produce wine everywhere. Of course, you have microclimates, small regions that will make it slightly better for one style of wine, for other style of wine, and we're gonna discover this tonight. In terms of production, Portugal is the 10th in the world, 5th in Europe. Vineyard area, we are still the 4th because we used to be the 4th in production, but in 2022, Germany passed us. But it's not a bad thing, actually. Portugal is focusing on producing less with higher quality and also higher price as well, because one of the things that everybody knows about Portuguese wine is that it's inexpensive. Okay, even though like very good quality ones are quite affordable. So vineyard area, we are the 4th, 9th in the world, and the most interesting thing is that we are the first one in global consumption of wine per capita, actually per capita consumption of wine. So yes, we do drink a lot, and you will have a very good time in Portugal, I'm sure. In terms of consumption, this is a typo. It's not world, but global wine consumption. When you don't consider, when actually you do consider value and not just liters per person, but value, we're the 11th. What shows us here inexpensiveness of Portuguese wines. Good. So basically, the first region that we're going to talk about is Vinho Verde. Vinho Verde has the name of the region itself is Minho, and the denomination of origin is Vinho Verde. Is the region that has the highest influence of the ocean. So the ocean brings us sea breezes and a lot of rain, a lot of humidity, and as you can see in these pictures, the region is very green, right? So if you come to Portugal, you will visit restaurants and you will have on the menu like green wine. This is just a big mistake because green wine is not a type of wine or a classification of wine. It's just something that was culturally introduced to the menus, to the restaurant, because green in Portuguese also means young, right? But most of the wines produced in Vinho Verde, or in free translation, green wine, are also young. So people make this misconception of the region as like green wine regions only produce green, kind of green young wine. Okay. So basically, Vinho Verde is the Portuguese term for green wine. What does not it doesn't mean that it's young or yeah, or unripe. People think that the grapes are harvested while they're still unripe, and it's not true. Of course, they are not as ripe as in the other regions or in other warmer parts of this same region, but every viticulture will try their best to ripe the grapes the most, right? So basically, as you can see in the picture, is a very green region, and it has a lot of humidity and water. Every time that you have a lot of water, a lot of nutrients, happens what you see in the picture, vegetative growth. So the vines are greener, everything is greener. So it's one of the reasons why actually people decided to name this region Vinho Verde, green wine, because it's green. Okay, it's the color green. Soils are granitic, so you will see a lot of soils in Portugal. Many of the regions are granitic, but Vinho Verde is quite interesting because it has like a bedrock around 8 or 9 meters down. Like the roots don't need to go very further on to looking for water. So it's easy to have water, it's easy to have nutrients, and this is a good a characteristic that defines the style that is done in the region. 24,500 hectares planted. This is one of the most planted regions in Portugal, behind only from Douro and Lisbon now. It's one of the main exported regions as well, but it's more focused on volume than price in terms of exportation. Just a fun historical fact. Normally, The most famous grape planted in this region is Alvarinho, right? And the most common wine is light body, white, acidic, and so on. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, more or less, the most planted variety was not even white. It was a black variety called Vignon. And
Wow.
if you have tried Vignon, it's quite challenging. It's an interesting variety. You
What a
have to be
polite
in a
way of
good
putting
mood.
it. Right.
Yeah, you have to be in a good way, in
Okay.
a good mood. And for example, you have to pair with the right food. If you've been to the north, you know that there are some times of the year that you can, for example, do wine pairing of Vinho de Malga, that is a very harsh red wine, with lampreia rice. That is a very rich rice made with a fat and very flavorful fish.
Mm.
Okay, I don't know if you have tried those, but yeah. So Vinho Verde, it's not just that simple college wine that we are used to buy for €2, and yeah, Vinho Verde also has beautiful crafted white wine. Uh, you have to try, for example, aged Alvarinhos, aged in oak or bottle. Yeah, you have. This is a very rich region that produces white rosés, reds, and everything else. Okay, good. And now we're going to Bairrada. Bairrada also have a coastal area, so some influence of the ocean. So if you see this slightly purple stain on the map, this is where the DO is allowed. So if you plant outside of this area, you have to label your wine as Beta Atlântico. But if you are inside of this purple area, you can label your wine Bairrada. Bairrada in the past was very famous for red wine production because of a grape variety called Baga. Baga is an amazing grape variety, but it was in the past was very extracted with a lot of body, with a lot of tannins. It was not a very easy to drink wine. It needed to age a lot, and more or less 20 years ago, there was a little bit more than that, maybe. There is a group of producers called the Bagas Friends, and they reinvented Baga and helped Bairrada to be more modern, more elegant in red wine production. Uh, Another thing that is interesting about Bairrada, about wine production, is that Bairrada is now the most productive area for sparkling wine in Portugal. So if you like traditional method sparkling wine like champagne, like cava, you should try Bairrada and Távora Varosa. That is a smaller and older region. But Bairrada now is it's more focused on the sparkling production. What's also makes sense because the gastronomy in Bairrada needs high acidity, needs freshness, and goes very well both with Baga or sparkling. The soil is maybe the most unique part of Bairrada. It's limestone clay. It's the highest concentration of chalk in the soil in Portugal, what makes it perfect for sparkling and for grapes that need like a constant water flow to ripe perfectly. Vineyard area only 13,000 hectares, only 13,000 hectares, but it's a region that is growing a lot in terms of quality and awareness as well. Okay, so Dão Lafões is our third region actually, because Lafões now is almost gone. People don't talk about Lafões a lot, but if you want to know, it's quite interesting because you are in a bigger region called Terras do Dão, and then you have two smaller DOs called Dão, that is more than 90% of the production, and Lafões. Lafões, it's similar in terms of style from Vinho Verde. It's light acid, light reds, light whites, and very fresh. It's also cheaper in terms of price and than Dão. Normally, Dão have this. They have some subregions. The most important one is Serra da Estrela. Serra da Estrela is a quite interesting subregion because it's the second highest mountain in Portugal and the highest one in the continental part of Portugal. And it produces an amazing cheese as well, by the way. Uh, but it's also interesting for the production of wine because you have a very how can I say distinguish climate, microclimate in every part, every small part of Serra da Estrela, and it makes richer and more complex wines. If you have, for example, in if your grapes are planted, for example, in different altitude, you can blend altitudes and make it more complex. It's quite interesting. Okay, so basically, the climate's moderated climate, soil granitic, 20,000 hectares of vineyard planted. It's Dão. Historically, it's quite interesting because Dão was a region that collapsed 50 years ago, more or less. It was a region that before, in the past, was advertised as the Portuguese Burgundy. A little bit of overselling, if you ask me, but yeah, during it was even before the dictatorship, but during the dictatorship, Dão received a lot of governmental help. Okay, the dictator was from Dão. And in the end of his regime, Dão lost a lot of money, so it collapsed. After that, Dão started to be like a region that was focused on bulk wine, on cooperatives. And more or less 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, actually, a little bit less than that, the region started to reinvent themselves and focus more on quality. From in 20 in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, 26 no 2015, the vineyard area was only 11,000 hectares planted. Now it's 20,000 hectares planted. In 2009, you could buy 1 hectare of planted vineyard for from less than 5,000 euros. Okay, 2009. Now 1 hectare of planted vineyard is around 150,000 euros.
Mm,
So yeah, that's how the region is growing.
yeah.
What are the main styles of wine produced in Dão? Remember that I told you that Dão was the Portuguese Burgundy? Yes. So remember those Chardonnays that are beautiful in Burgundy? Yes, Dão has a great variety called Encruzado that is like a mixture between Chardonnay and Chenin Blanc. So it's beautiful. It's has a good aroma, very nice acidity, goes extremely well with oak, has that oiliness, that texture that is very common from Chenin Blanc, from some styles of Chardonnay. So it's quite interesting. You should try Encruzado. Encruzado is the grape variety that I think will represent Portugal in a very short time. Okay, good. Besides that, Dão also produces reds. The reds are not as Pinot Noir. The reds tends to be richer and fuller bodied than Pinot Noir. Okay, so it's not very accurate to compare Dão with Burgundy. Okay, Douro. We could spend like a whole day talking about Douro. I will try to be, yeah, I will try to be as quick as possible for because I don't want to bore you with a lot of blah 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 about the regions. And I'm sure that you want to try some wines. After this class, you probably want to just quick stop in some wine bar and have a Portuguese wine. I'm sure. Well, I will do it actually. So I hope you will
You as
do it
well.
for
Right.
me.
Okay.
Yes. Well, Douro is the oldest region in the world to have demarcation and legislation. Okay, was the first region in the world to have laws. So you probably know a lot about Portuguese bureaucracy, right?
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. So we invented this, right? Basically, Douro was like demarcated and legislated, which means there was laws of production created in 1756. So it was the first one. It was 10 of September of 1756 by the Marquês de Pombal. Uh, yes, so basically he did it to try to avoid losing port for other countries, port wine for the countries, because basically there was already other countries producing port wine, right? Not literally port wine, but port wine style, and call it port wine. I'm very sad to say this, but USA still do it today. South Africa, USA, Russia, I think Australia signed the commercial agreement in 2022. There is a commercial agreement that protects all the denomination of origin in Europe, like Champagne, like Douro, those regions. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's 134 or 135 countries that have signed this agreement. I know that for sure Brazil has signed it in 1994, Australia in 2022, and yeah. So basically, those names that you see under DO, Douro, Porto, they are protected by this commercial agreement.
You didn't mention the British there, Diego, if I may ask about the British. I think the British have always been very respectful of port wine, have they not?
Yeah, they've been very respectful because, of course, they were part of the industry for a long. They are part of the industry since forever,
Yeah.
right? The British were the first ones, the first shippers, and after uh, the British Armada helped us to get rid of Napoleon, they also earned the right to be the only shippers for quite long while, for quite long time. So these made them earn a lot of money and become also producers, and yeah, that's why you see a lot of port houses that have English names, British names, and so on.
Yep.
Just like Taylor's Flatgate Partnership Group, the ones that owns Wow and the Wine School. So if you are drinking Taylor's, thank you very much. You are helping to pay my salary.
Excellent. Do the right thing, everybody. Okay, next time you're buying port.
Yeah. Great. So basically, Douro is divided in three regions, as you see in the image. The main difference is the level of rain. The first one, the number one, is Baixo Corgo, and rains very little. Sorry, very much. The number two rains around 800 milliliters a year, so it's kind of average. And the number three rains only 450 milliliters a year, and it's quite low for grape production. And one thing that is important to say is that in Douro, it's forbidden to irrigate. Okay, you cannot irrigate. Um, okay, but why you have those difference in raining? Mainly because of this big mountain that you see on the top right picture. This is Marão Mountain, and if you ever are driving through the Douro Valley from Porto to the Douro Valley, and imagine Douro is cloudy, and then you're driving to the actually Porto, the city of Porto is cloudy, foggy, rainy, and you're driving, you will pass through a huge tunnel to get to the Douro Valley, and it's like entering Narnia. Blue skies, everything changes, warmer, drier, just because of this mountain. Okay, so this mountain works as like a rain shadow over the valley, and it allows us to produce the style of wine that we do produce in Douro. If you see the two pictures where you see vineyards, the one in the left, you see those stone walls that are very narrow angles, and they kind of uh, increase the area of plantation in the mountain. Those are called socalcos, and they are part of a protection that Douro earned from UNESCO in 2000. Basically, in 2000, yeah, Douro became World Human Heritage. So you cannot touch the socalcos. You cannot move them. If
Wow.
you buy a vineyard that there is socalcos on it, you have to protect it, and you have to. If something happens, you'll have to rebuild it. On this image, you can see two different kinds of socalcos on the upper part of the picture on the left. On the upper part, you see very small socalcos, almost like not very well made. This is more or less 250 years old. These on the bottom part, there's more straight lines and so on, are around 150 years old. And the other picture on the bottom right is the modern way of planting vines in the Douro region. It's called patamares, and yeah, it's impossible to mechanize. So it's not forbidden to mechanize. It's just impossible because of the hilly aspect of the region.
Mm.
Moderate to moderately warm climate. Schist. It's interesting. Schist is a false cognate. It's not the same thing that means in Portuguese. Xisto is
Yes.
not schist. It's a false cognate. People don't talk about it. I think it's interesting because xisto in Portuguese is a group of stones, and schist in English is one stone, right? I think the best translation is shale
Right.
because
Okay.
in the xisto, in the Portuguese version of xisto, you have what English speakers would call black slate, blue slate, red slate, schist, yellow schist, blue schist, and so on. A lot of different stones. Okay, so xisto is like a group of stones in Portuguese, and in English is not. So
And
I
you have
think
the
this
villages, don't you? In central Portugal, there's a Gisto, Aldeias de Gisto, isn't there? With
it's
made of these.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
made of
But you
beautiful
won't see them.
and
You won't see them in the Douro. This schist here is a different reference altogether.
you might see one or two close to the Douro Valley.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, not the big ones, but actually I have visited one that I have tried pastel de nozes, a nut tart. It is quite interesting. Let me just remember here in my notes the name of the village. I will tell you.
We'll be making notes about this as well. Like if there's a rare
Amazing, beautiful.
tart we haven't tried here, we will be making our way to that village, I think.
It's Talas now. I will
Oh
try
yes, yes,
to.
I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. I've been there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Amazing.
Amazing village.
Hmm.
If you want to visit, amazing. Not close to the Douro Valley though,
No,
but
no, this is more in
yeah,
Lausanne, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So 44,000 hectares of vineyard planted, the most planted area in Portugal, but the yields of production, so the production per hectare is very low. By law, has to be a maximum of 5,500, but it's impossible to get to these numbers. So normally the producers go into 4,200, 4,500 kilos per hectare. Okay. So basically, just a little bit of just the introduction of port wine. Port wine is a fortified wine, which means it has alcohol added to it. In port is a grape spirit. Um, these are some of the most important dates. For example, the first registrations that were found under the name port wine were found in 1678, and 1703 there is the Mithrain Treaty that is still in place nowadays. So it's the oldest commercial treaty in the world between Portugal and British. Okay. After that was also the Windsor Treaty, if I'm not mistaken, but they are almost the same. It's just Some changes, but they're mostly the same. 1756, the demarcation. 1820, it was quite interesting because before 1820, port was dry, not sweet, was dry. And after 1820, actually after 1809, but Portuguese people don't like to mention this year because it was the year of the invasion. But in 1809, we had this amazing year for grapes. It was perfect. Grapes produced a lot of sugar naturally. And even after the whole fermentation, there was still residual sugar. So it was the first time that people tasted port wine slightly sweeter. And then the market, the market is always our boss, right? So basically, um, if clients want sweeter port, let's give them sweeter ports. We cannot control nature, we cannot control how grapes ripe, but we can control when we stop the fermentation by adding alcohol. So the fortification was just for shipping. Now the fortification after 1820, the fortification becomes a part of the port wine production, stopping the fermentation earlier and keeping residual sugar and making sweeter ports.
Wow.
Yeah, 1932, there's the creation of Casa do Douro, that now it's known as the IVDP Institute, that regulates everything. And in 2001, UNESCO grant the World Human Heritage Award to the Douro Valley. So yeah, fortified wine, alcohol between 1822, whites, rosés, and reds. The more commons are the reds that are divided in rubies and tawnies. But I won't talk about it now because you will have to come to the school to try port wines with me and understand all the different styles that we have to offer.
Very
And
good.
to finish, the last region is Alentejo, and Alentejo is one of the most traditional regions of Portuguese wines, one of the most exported as well. In terms of DO, inside of the DO Alentejo, uh, if you only consider wines with denomination of origin, Alentejo is the biggest producer in the country. Okay, even it's less planted than the Douro Valley, it is the biggest producer if you consider DOs. If you consider every wine, not just DOs, Lisbon is the biggest producer because Lisbon produces a lot of IGP wine. Okay,
Mm.
yeah, another thing that nobody talks about, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand why. It's a very good piece of information to understand how, for example, grape varieties that are more suitable to the south of Portugal, like Syrah, are very productive and very easy to make like a decent wine with it. So, for example, in 1 hectare in Lisbon, you can produce decent Syrah. You can produce like 20,000 kilos with 1 hectare. It's impossible to beat it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Syrah is one of the grape varieties that are invading Portugal, invading in a good way, Portugal, because we Portuguese are very proud of the indigenous varieties. Portugal is the second country in the world that uses the most variety of indigenous varieties. So basically, we use 240 indigenous grapes from the Iberic Peninsula. From then, 180 something are just Portuguese, and the other 60 something we share with our neighbors, with Spain.
Wow.
So, for example, if you like Tempranillo, you will love Tinta Roriz in the Douro, or you will also love Aragonese in Alentejo because they're the same grape. Three names for the same grape, right? Yeah, it's not as like it's not very difficult to learn Portuguese, right? So let's make things a little bit more interesting and add more names to it.
Yeah.
Yes. So Alentejo is completely different from the Douro Valley. It's this vast plain, as you see in the picture. The soils are very rich. It's very, very. How can I say this? There are many different types of soil actually. In Alentejo, you find a lot of different types of soil. We have a warm climate in Alentejo. Alentejo is quite interesting because it's older than Portugal in terms of production of wine, because the Romans used to produce wine in Alentejo. After the Romans, there are a lot of letters that were sent through kings, like you have to try wines from this region, while Alentejo was still part of Castilla. And yeah, it's quite interesting region. And uh, during the last century, Alentejo was always the breadbasket of the country. So every time Portugal faced a crisis or anything like this, it uh, it used Alentejo to help it to produce bread and wheat and so on. The last one, if I'm not mistaken, was like in 1970 something. There was a law that regulated the wheat production in Alentejo. So yeah, quite recent. And after that, the producers in Alentejo were able to rebuild and focus more on quality, international level of wines, and so on. And it's coming back to its glorious times in the past, and so on.
Mm.
25,000 hectares planted and a lot of production. See, I just choose not to mention a lot of grape varieties or a lot of style of wines because I want you to come to the school and try, of course. But I had to do this very quick presentation, and I choose these five regions for you to know how vast and how uh, rich Portugal is in terms of different style of wines produced. Alentejo, for example, is very common to have full body rates like Cabernet Sauvignons and so on. Um, and even with this, you can notice as well the Portuguese craft, the heritage, the cultural heritage, the winemaking processes that are quite common in Portugal, like using old oak and big vessels and so on, that influences the flavor and how wine is made. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed it. And
Absolutely. That's been fascinating. Wonderful thing about wine is, of course, we're talking about politics, geography, chemistry, culture, everything, language. It's all in there, isn't it?
gastronomy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, everything comes into the world of wine. And thank you for that invitation. Astrid, perhaps you could join us on screen to extend that invitation. This is going to be a fantastic get together. Diego, for the time, please stay with us because I think we'll have
Sure.
a little bit of an after party with you, with our premium members here, so they can ask you questions. Before I close the stream on YouTube, we've got an invitation to join Expats Portugal in Porto and visit you as part of that visit. So, Astrid, what's happening?
On the 26th of October, we've got an Expats Portugal Porto meetup, and part of the weekend or the day includes being part of Diogo's course that demystifying wine. So I can see there that Denise is saying that she
Yeah.
needs to do the course. So hopefully she's going to be in Porto on the 26th of October. Definitely come along. The seats are limited, so you can go onto the Expats Portugal website, go into the calendar, and pre-book your seat for that one. And there are more details about accommodation, where we're staying, what we're doing, and things like that. So feel free to come and enjoy the life in
Fantastic.
Portugal and all the world of wines.
Wonderful. Thanks, Astrid. And thanks, Diego, for the time being. I just want to thank you publicly while we're still streaming live on YouTube. And those of you watching on YouTube, I invite you to sign up as Expats Portugal Premium members as well, so you can join the Zoom session, which we're about to continue now. So ending the stream over there right now. Visit expatsportugal.com to sign up as a member. And we'll keep recording tonight for those premium members who can't be with us tonight. We would love to hear the wonderful presentation and the after party and the chat with Diego we're about to have as well. So if you don't mind staying with us for another 15 or 20 minutes more, Diego, that would be wonderful. We don't want to keep you from the wine bar, but it'll be lovely to quiz you on some of the amazing points that came up. I learned so much myself. I thought I knew a thing or two about Portuguese wine, but as we said before, there's always more to learn. Denise, yes, I need in capital letters to do this course. And can you please put the info for the school in the chat? We'll do that as well, Alex. And obrigado, Diego. Great webinar, says Pedro, who's joining us from Wales tonight as well. Yeah, really informative. Any questions, anybody then? So please, we are still recording. So please, if you want to ask any questions, share what you're drinking tonight as well and get Diego's opinion on that. Absolutely brilliant, Diego. Thank you so much.